Welcome into the Verdin Verdict stream. I'm joined by G Sports. Today we got the commitment tracker on full go for you this weekend for the LSU football recruiting update. We got a little bit of a college football coaching tier list. Then we're going to warn you on what teams in the SEC you should be watching this year. They got some sleepers. They got some teams that you're going to expect to do well. And then, of course, they have some teams that are just going to come out the gate, perform well, shock you, knock your socks off. We're going to go ahead and try to dial that in. And then we're going to end the stream up with the J.J. Reddick hire. Shocking a few, not many. You kind of heard the rumors and the murmurs throughout the past couple of weeks. But all in all, it's an interesting hire. If you would have told me a few months ago that J.J. Reddick would not only be entering the coaching world, but at the professional level in the NBA, coaching LeBron James, I mean, it just keeps getting more and more interesting. But make sure, like the stream for us, comment, your thoughts throughout the stream, get involved in the discussion. Before we open this thing up, though, G, first off, thanks for coming in. How you doing, man? What you got going on today?
Doing pretty good, man. Excited to talk about some LSU recruiting, and tap into some of these SEC underdogs and some of the elite college football coaches in America, man.
All right, glad to have you first things first, but let's get right into this LSU football recruiting news update. The thing that everybody is waiting to hear. Harlem Berry, Bryce Underwood back in Baton Rouge this weekend. This is a very, it's interesting because everybody is getting worried as they see the rankings and LSU's class get to that number one, number two spot, and everyone's just like, man, we saw what happened with DeCorian Moore. We don't want to see it happen again. The decommitment, the losing a top ranked recruit. Well, I think LSU's kind of steering clear of that type of situation. And quite frankly, they're honestly gaining number one recruits. Yesterday, they get Carius Kern. He's the third number one commit that they have currently. Of course, they had all four. But he's a four-star from Arkansas, and I feel like this is one of those moments where, first things first, you do have to commend Brad Davis. You do have to give him his flowers, his credit. Such a big boost to this staff, to not only the recruiting side of things, but just the coaching staff in general. Brad Davis is, one of my favorite positional coaches, and then he's working his magic out there, not only helping LSU's recruiting rankings and their entirety of their class as a whole stay just, at the top of the news, at the top of the forefront, pulling in the big names. Then you get Harlem Berry and Bryce Underwood to kind of walk around, show face a little bit at this elite camp coming up. How important is that to have your top prospects so integrated in this process? They're always on campus. They're always coming back home. It kind of feels to me like these guys are locks and you don't have to worry about them moving at all.
I think it's very important, man, because it gets them kind of acclimated into how things are going down there in Baton Rouge, especially somebody for like Bryce Underwood, who's so far away in Michigan. So any opportunity you have to be able to get him and his family on campus, I think is important because it makes them more comfortable. It gets his mom and his daddy more familiar with Baton Rouge and um, just being having that intuition as parents to say, look, this is the place for my child. And so I think that's very, very critical for him. And then Harlem Bear being there, I'm sure him and Bryce Underwood is building a really good relationship. I think the staff, being able to spend time with them this weekend, that's anytime you get a chance to just keep building that rapport with your commitments is very, very critical because when you got these teams like Texas and Michigan and these blue blood schools trying to come in, in the latter part of their senior years and trying to flip them, that relationship they're building right now, you know, like this weekend, is going to pay off because they're going to think back on those conversations. They're going to think back on them different experiences they had with them every time they came to LSU and came to Baton Rouge. So it's very, very important to get that offensive lineman committee yesterday. I can't say enough about Brad Davis and what he's doing. I feel Tiger fans should not be worried at all about when Will Campbell and Emory Jones leave after this year going to the draft because what they have in that room already and the offensive linemen they got coming in, this LSU offensive line is going to be really, really good for the future. So excited to see Bryce Underwood today and Harlem Bear. I'm going to be in attendance for the elite camp tonight, the Friday night lights. Can't wait to see, them interacting with the staff and some of the different elite kids that's going to be on campus today or tonight rather.
Yeah, and another name I seen floating around a potential visit for this weekend, Chad Jones Jr. That's very interesting name if he's going to live up to that bill. That's a very, very big generational athlete because
Yep.
if you got any bit of that Chad Jones senior ability. Oh man, I hope he stays. Also, I think the interesting thing about these camps, it not only does it give Bryce Underwood and Harlem Berry an opportunity to come to LSU and, like we're saying, build the relationships, but it also gives Brian Kelly, Joe Sloan, and his entire staff an opportunity to stay at home base and have everyone come to them, whether it be the recruits at the camp or whatnot. This is an opportunity for, like you're saying, open up the doors and have everybody understand what they're walking into at LSU. You see the facility, you see this, you see that. They're not coming flying to you if you're an out of state kid or what have you. It's an entirely different field just because you're on the field that you'd potentially be practicing on, in the elements that you'd be practicing in too. Like you're really getting the full LSU experience, which I feel like in athletics and in the visiting world is pretty important. Now we're on the topic of visits, so I do have this noted. I kind of want to explain the difference to the viewers just of an unofficial visit, an official visit. Yeah, there's some rules, there's some regulation changes, but really, all in all, if you had to break it down, what do you think, separates them? What do you think is one more important than the other? Are they equally as important? What are your takes on this?
On what's important.
Like to explain an unofficial and an official visit and their impacts
Oh,
in the recruiting process.
right, right. Uh, the differences between an official and an unofficial visit is when you come on a official visit, the school takes care of everything: flights, rental cars, food, your housing, where you're staying at, hotels. It's fully paid for, and you can have up to, I want to say, four total people, might be three. Don't quote me on that. It's three or four total people that can come on an official visit and be taken care of with flights and et cetera, et cetera. And it's the bells and whistles, man. When you show up in the hotel room, uh, they got your favorite candy, all your favorite snacks, gear, just anything that particular recruit likes, they're gonna have it sitting in the hotel room when you get there. You know, they take you to some of the nicest restaurants in whatever particular city that the university is in. You get to do different events with some of the players on the team. They take you out in the city. It's a really really good experience, but also it can be fool's gold because sometimes recruits go on these official visits and they can get brainwashed and kind of manipulated in a sense, thinking that this is what it's going to be the whole time while I'm here. And that's why you see a lot of kids commit on their official visits because, especially if it's their first time doing it, right? You never been through that, man. You could get blown away. Like, and a lot of kids never been anywhere. You dealing with some kids that's from poverty that never been out their state, never been out their hometown. You can get a commitment real quick from a family like that. So, that's why you see so many kids commit on an official visit. An unofficial visit, it's strictly up to the family and the prospect to get to the school, to far as driving there, far as if you got to fly there, if you're hungry, you need to get something to eat. It's strictly on the family, but you're still able to interact with the staff, tour the campus, do different things with the players, and with the coaches. But everything is on you from a financial standpoint on an unofficial visit. But I think it's very pivotal for any recruit to go on an official visit before they take an official visit to a school. Because if you never been on a visit there and then you just take an official there, man, you can get blindsided and kind of brainwashed and kind of swindled in a sense that this is the place for me because the official visit is going to be something you'd never experienced before. So that's pretty much the differences between an official and an unofficial visit.
And yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like that part you said about how you get in there, and sometimes it's fool's gold, sometimes it's not exactly the situation that you're walking into. That does lead, to some discontinuity, some uh, people kind of getting uninterested in their situation. And I feel like the beauty about these visits here at LSU, especially like let's say at Tiger Stadium Saturday, you know what you're getting in terms of that experience. You can't fabricate some things like that. So going through these visits, yeah, I think it is definitely important to keep a open mind just to know, like, hey, they're trying to win you. They're trying to sell you hard. Well, we're going to switch gears from this recruiting news. Like we said, Harlem Berry, Bryce Underwood on campus. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into the stream. Y'all go ahead and hit a like button. We got G Sports in the building. We're talking elite college football coaches left. G's a Michigan fan, so Jim Harbaugh's out the door. That one's a little
Yep.
bit painful, a little sensitive subject. And we're LSU
Yep.
fans also, so we gotta celebrate a little bit. Nick Saban's gone. No, I'm joking, but you do lose a lot of elite caliber coaches. You do lose football geniuses. You do lose people that some would say were the best college football coach available. Now that begs the question: who takes the crown? Who is the best college football coach left? And quite frankly, who are elite coaches? Because the whole reason that I have this segment, I stumbled across a couple people wondering whether or not Brian Kelly is considered an elite football coach. Now, I would say undoubtedly yes. He has the most wins out of any coach right now. Um, yeah, the Notre Dame situation didn't end the way everyone would have wanted it because you do want a national championship, but he does bring the program to legitimacy. He does come to LSU, and in 2 years, the first year really, go to the SEC title game. Within 2 years, has a Heisman quarterback, and I mean, right, we know what Heisman quarterbacks usually yield at LSU, a national championship, but it's not that far from it. Also, I feel like we kind of have mentioned this, especially I think it was Wednesday's show. It takes time to be able to build a program to get to the top. I don't think it's just going to happen overnight in one season, maybe even in 2 seasons. Um, Another elite coach I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of credit to. We're talking about building programs, talking about bringing people to legitimacy. I think Dabo Sweeney, he really did that better than some. I'm not going to say better than all, better than most, but I'll give him his credit where credit's due. I think he made Clemson a powerhouse. I would throw Dabo's name in the elite bracket. Just I feel like it would be a little disrespectful to not include him in there. And of course, you got to put Kirby Smart in there. I had to put it last. I'm not a Georgia hater, but I do think Kirby Smart, what he's done over there is remarkable. It's not exactly like an Alabama dynasty, but it's one of the closest things that you've seen. It's one of the closest teams you'll get to what Nick Saban was able to produce. And is it because he was under Nick Saban? Is it because, he got that tutelage from the great Nick? I don't know. But I think that Georgia is kind of hard to deny the trajectory of their program and what they've been doing. So I would say Brian Kelly, Kirby Smart, Dabo Sweeney. That's definitely three elite college football coaches. Now, as you go down the list, as you start mentioning more names, then you it kind of gets harder and harder to label some of these elite. So I'm gonna end my elite list right there, and I'll go ahead and start giving an honorable mention. Honorable mention, I'll throw out Ryan Day. I mean, I know his best days are probably behind him. He might be able to get over the hump now. There's not as much competition, but I don't know. If he had all that talent and he's been in 3 college football playoffs and he's had that moment, it's kind of hard for me to think that they're going to be able to get over that hump. Speaking of getting over the hump, this guy probably has his best chance in his career to get over the hump. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. I think he could be potentially hitting his peak. He's had 2 of his best seasons back to back. They had a pretty good offseason, as far as off seasons go in college football. And I think they could be a team that you kind of see make some noise next season. And I'm not saying Ole Miss 100% guaranteed a college football playoff spot, but what I am saying is it wouldn't surprise me. I think that Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss are a couple pieces away from really being able to scare every single team in college football whenever they come to play their squad. Last 2 coaches I'll put on this honorable mention list. I got Kalen DeBoer. I know he's just getting started. I know he just got to Alabama, but that's a beautiful situation. We're talking about Nick Saban being the cream of the crop. Part of that was because of location and the dynasty that obviously he built, but that brand is still there. He didn't take that brand with him. Is it going to be a little bit harder to maintain and uphold? Yes. If he has a horrible year in year 1, will it crumble it a little bit? Of course. But as of right now, I still think, he's just getting started. I'll give him the honorable mention list. He had a pretty good run in Washington. And I'll end my list with Mike Norvell. I think Florida State is definitely creeping into that legitimate powerhouse threat level. Last year, it's kind of hard to ignore what they did. I feel like the Seminoles, I mean, some people are going to say that they were robbed a college football playoff spot. I'm not going to join that petition list. I think, the best four teams got in, but you got 12 teams this year. You want to you want to make your presence felt, you want to make your name known, you want to get to that national championship spot. Well, this is probably your time to do it. Uh, I feel like the elite coaches, though, it's very hard to give more than three guys that stature, put them on that tier. G, if you had to be the if you had to be the elite labeler, who are your elite coaches in college football right now?
I think it's Kirby Smart and then everybody else. I mean, what Kirby Smart has done at Georgia has just been remarkable. 3 national titles since he's arrived there in 2017. Over 100 and some 100 plus draft picks. I think 17 first rounders. Uh, you know, when you think about Georgia football before Kirby Smart got there, always was a solid program, top 25 program, but they never was considered an elite program until Kirby got there. And you just got to think about when Nick Saban retiring, right? People like that leaving the game. I think it's Kirby Smart and then everybody else. Um, After that, if you're asking me today, I would have to put Dan Lanning in it from Oregon. I think Dan Lanning, this is going into year 3 as the head coach at Oregon. You can see what he's building over there. You take somebody like Bo Nix from Auburn, who nobody would have ever thought that he would be a draft pick, and you bring him to Oregon 1 year, and he's a Heisman Trophy candidate, and he gets picked in the first round, and has that offense looking like one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. I think Dan Lanning is an elite football coach. I think he's going to be one of those coaches that has Oregon in the national championship mix year in and year out, and he's going to be the cream of the crop on that West Coast. After that, I got to go with Steve Sarkisian at Texas. I see what Sarkisian is building over there. Coming from under that Nick Saban tree, and understanding the landscape of recruiting, and he's one of the best offensive minds in football. I think Sarkisian is an elite football coach. I think you see him be probably a top 14, top 3 team in the country this year. And with the recruiting class he had coming in, and the recruiting class he had coming in for 2025, Sarkisian is probably on his way to winning the national championship sooner than later, right? And then with Texas getting into the SEC, is only going to build that program up even more. So I think Sarkisian is definitely should be considered one of the elite coaches. I'm gonna throw Ryan Day in there. I know a lot of people give Ryan Day a lot of flack for in big games they piss down their leg, but he has shown a level of consistency in Ohio State. I know he hasn't won a national championship. He was so close a few times, but you can't dismiss what he's done over there. And then when Jim Harbaugh leaving, I think you see Ryan Day put himself in a situation to where they end up winning a national championship sooner than later too. It's going to be interesting to see this year with the 12-team playoff. Can Ryan Day finally get in one? Right? Can he finally get in one? A lot of people up there in Columbus is saying they think they need to move on from Ryan Day. I think otherwise. I think when you talk about somebody like that, he is one of the most elite coaches in the country, in my opinion. And then I'm gonna go with a dark horse that nobody probably gonna ever think that should be on this list. And you call me biased, but I think John Summerall, Tulane's new head coach, is an elite coach. I think when you look back 2 to 3 years from now, we're gonna be talking about John Summerall as one of the top 5, top 7 head coach in the country. What he did at Troy was unbelievable. His track record, as a defensive minded coach, has been very well known around the country. You talk to any of the top coaches in the country, and I talked to a lot of them. John Summerall's name is always coming up as one of the best football minds. And the way he's good with people, the way he recruited at Troy, the way he's recruiting at Tulane currently, I think John Summerall is an elite coach. And I think he's going to have Tulane in position to be a top 20 team in the country. And then I could see him getting calls to go to a big blue blood school, Power 5 school in the next 2 years, and then having itself in a situation, like I said, to be considered one of the elite coaches in the country. And my last one I'm gonna throw in there is Kyle Whittingham, the head coach at Utah, right? I think this guy has shown a level of consistency at Utah for a number of years, right? He's finished in the top 20, I think, 8 of the last 9 years, right? He's beaten some big powerhouse programs over the years. Doesn't have the resources that none of the blue blood schools we talked about. If Kyle Whittingham was at a SEC school or a major Power Five school in the country, I think you would see him as I think a lot of people would consider him as one of the top coaches in the country, and he would get better recruits. What he's doing at Utah with getting 2 stars and 3 stars, and he might get a 4 star in here and there. Could you imagine if Kyle Whittingham had a real legitimate recruiting class, like a top 10, top 15 recruiting class, how good his teams will be? And so when I see what he's done with less, I consider him as an elite coach, Kyle Whittingham. So that's my elite coaches, man, in the country.
I like that last one. I like that dark horse because not a lot of people are going to remember that conference championship against Utah, derailing Caleb Williams' hope. I think it's a pretty good list, pretty solid list. What do you think about Brian Kelly? Would you put Brian Kelly in the elite category?
Brian Kelly is on the cusp of being in the elite category. Uh, and look, if somebody puts Brian Kelly on their list as one of the elite coaches in the country, look, that's arguable. I mean, he could definitely be on that list. Uh, I think now that he's at LSU, you gotta win an natty with the type of talent you got there, right? When you was at Notre Dame, you kind of got away with it because, like I just said about Kyle Whittingham, that Notre Dame, they're gonna get some good recruits. They're gonna get a couple 4 stars. They might even get 1 or 2 5 stars, but they're not gonna get the best of the best year in and year out at Notre Dame like they did years ago when they had all the resources. College football has caught up. A lot of blue bloods has caught up versus 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago when Notre Dame was the mecca of college football, right? And so he got away with, just being a top 10 team in the country, getting to the 14 playoff and getting dismantled, you know what I mean, in the national championship or the semifinal game. That was good enough for Notre Dame.
Right.
That was good enough. But now when you're at a school like LSU, who was producing a Heisman Trophy winner, 2 receivers going in the first round, and you getting that kind of talent on your team year in and year out, and you at a prestigious school like LSU, you got to deliver with a natty. You got to deliver with a natty, and if you don't, then it's going to be hard to be considered as an elite coach. Because what I just said about Kyle Whittingham, if he was at a school like LSU, or if he was at a blue blood school with the resources that these blue blood schools have, he probably would be a national champion by now. I think he's that good of a coach. So when I look at it from that perspective, man, I think that's the only thing that Brian Kelly is missing from his resume to be considered an elite coach to me, right? To be in that number with Kirby Smart and them. He gotta win a natty at LSU, man. He has to, and that's going to put him in a different category, in my opinion.
Yeah, if Brian Kelly wins a national championship at LSU, then that's going to open a whole new plethora of conversations because now you're going to start to wonder where he ranks amongst guys like Les Miles and Ed Orgeron. And then the LSU fans are going to take that one and snowball it. I do see Brian Kelly winning a national championship here. Now, will it be this
I do too.
year?
I do too.
Will it be this year? That one might be a little premature. I think they got a good shot, and they're going to get very close. But if you had to ask me, if I really had to put a number on it, I would say within 3 years, and that's a wide net. That's a huge 7-foot cast net that you're pulling every single thing up underneath the water with. But I feel like patience definitely is a virtue here with this one because, Brian Kelly has shown flashes of being elite for me, just for the simple fact that, in 1 year, yeah, you could say they go to the SEC title game, but that whole season was made on the Alabama game. Now, when you break down the Alabama game in depth, do you win that game if you don't go for 2? And now that opens the question to Brian Kelly's play call and decision making and just his overall moxie. And I love it. I think Brian Kelly's got it, and he definitely has that it factor to be able to coach in the SEC because it takes a certain level of confidence in not only your team, your system, or just you, but you've got to be able to know that the process and the things you're preaching to your guys on a day-to-day basis or that of a professional football team because of the level of competition you're playing and how often you're playing it. And just that SEC gauntlet that, quite frankly, chews teams up and spits them out. And I've seen good things from Brian Kelly here so far. I never really felt like he was panicking as a head coach. I never felt like we were in a spot where he was a coach from outside of the conference struggling to catch up to the speed, if that makes sense. So I got high hopes for Brian Kelly, and I really do think we're gonna win a national championship. And I do think I'd have to put him in the elite category just because of how thin this is getting. You got really 1 to 2 names. I'll throw Kirby and Dabo as locks on that one, and then Dabo is kind of questionable for some just because of the recent struggles that Clemson's been on. But I feel like those 3 guys definitely going to be 3 of your best candidates here for college football coaches,
I
especially
think
with what we
this year
got.
is the best opportunity for Brian Kelly to win a national championship because I think that it's so wide open in college football. I
Indeed.
just really think this is the year for them to try to sneak in and win a natty.
And this might
I
be
really do.
this might be their most favorable schedule under Brian
Yeah,
Kelly.
yep, agree. Because I mean, your tough teams are at home.
Yep. And then you've got a beautiful start to the schedule. Um, the only teams we'll segue into this next section, the SEC teams that you should keep an eye on, because there are some teams here on this schedule. We're talking about it being favorable, but there are some teams that I would circle. One of them, I'll start it off pretty lightly. One of them, Texas A&M. I mean, everyone. I feel like it's kind of a new rivalry. Everyone's always watching for A&M versus LSU, as much as it was kind of rejected at first. People didn't think it was a rivalry. I think it's kind of slowly getting turned into that. I was a little skeptical of it at first myself, but now, with the Mike Elko era, I think that A&M could potentially be able to utilize a little bit of that defensive talent that they have. Um, the thing that they're going to have to really hope works is the gambling that they're doing in the transfer portal. 22 transfer portal players. Now that it could spell trouble, but it could also spell an instant turnaround. The transfer portal's hit or miss. Like I said, gambling. You never really know what what's going to happen when you're reaching into that portal. But we're talking about LSU starting 5-0. I looked at A&M's schedule. I could see them starting 5-0. Some of their tougher games on the entire year. Of course, they're going to play us. They're going to play Texas. They're going to play Mizzou. And I think they're really contingent on Connor Weigman and his start, and if he's going to be able to miss a beat after that injury. If somehow, some way, their quarterback can kind of produce and kind of stagnantly, keep up with some of these teams, then they could be in for, a big game, a big season, a big stretch, if you will. Are they going to be a national champion? That's an insane take. If I were to say that, you should probably click out of the stream right now. I lost my mind. But I think Texas A&M, though, they might be able to cause some trouble. They might be a sleeper where when you turn your TV on Saturday and LSU's playing the Aggies, you could sweat. Another team that I would definitely pay mind to, Tennessee. Now, Tennessee fans are going to be rejoicing hearing this because you've got a team in the College World Series right now. I mean, A&M too, both of y'all, arguably national champions in baseball. And if that happens, I'm sure that they're not going to let you hear the end of it. But Tennessee's toughest games, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia. 2 of those games seem probable. And quite frankly, if they even take one of those tough games, that puts them in a college football playoff talk because those are their 3 toughest. Those are the 3 losses I think Tennessee gets. Oklahoma, Bama, Georgia. Take one of them, you're a 2-loss team, especially in the SEC. I just don't see them getting locked out if they do that. And, like A&M situation, Nico, their quarterback, he's started pretty decent in his transition. And he had the 4 total touchdowns. I believe 3 of them were on the ground with his legs. He's got insane mobility. The thing with Tennessee, though, that I want everybody to remember is there's no more EC easing them into the SEC title. No, no, no. You got to earn that SEC playoff or championship berth. It's number 1 and number 2. If they both come out the West, they both come out the West. Tennessee is going to have to perform and have the best record to be able to represent the SEC and their side potentially. So I think Tennessee, like I said, going to have to take a tough game, going to have to show up, going to have to strap up the boots and play some tough football. They're capable of it though. Josh Heupel's pretty interesting coach, has some interesting schemes, and I feel like, they were doing this last year. They kind of get bapped on the head and they get pushed back down, but they could still be on the incline. They still could be on an upward trajectory. I don't think a 9-win season previously, before that, an 11-win season is anything contingent of them going downhill. Last SEC sleeper I'd keep an eye on. We kind of talked about it a little bit during our breakdown stream on Monday, but I think Oklahoma is a little bit of an interesting squad. Now, they got probably, out of these three teams that we're talking about, I think they have the most returning pieces, the most returning depth, the most experienced players on the way back. If you look at their tacklers, top 13 tacklers last season, 11 of them returning. Their running back, Gavin Shawshuk, very interesting guy. 5 games in a row with 100 yards to close the season. If Oklahoma's got a running game like that, and they've got 11 of their top 13 tacklers coming back, plus they got 3 veteran wide receivers coming in, I think the only thing that stops Oklahoma would be that first year running into the SEC gauntlet. And what does their gauntlet look like, you ask? Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Mizzou, Alabama, LSU. That's their toughest games, if you ask me. That's 6 games. I just rattled off 6 out of that's over half of your schedule that I'm circling, that I'm questioning, that I'm wondering if you have the chops to make it out of. Can they? Very possible. But Oklahoma could be in for a rude awakening in their entrance to the SEC. Could they be very good? Yes. Do they have the return of pieces, the experience? Do they have the minds? They do. But they also have landmines on the ground that they're navigating throughout that treacherous part of the season. And I feel like that might be a team that could do good. It's my least likely. I'll throw that as the honorable mention squad. But Tennessee and Texas A&M, I do expect some really good things from, believe it or not. G, who are your sleepers in the Southeastern Conference?
I only have 2, and when you just said one of them, Oklahoma is definitely going to be a sleeper this year, man. You got to think about a coach like Brent Venables, who was the defensive coordinator at Clemson through that I don't want to call it a dynasty, right? But it was a nice run when Dabo was winning national championships over there at Clemson. You know, Brent Venables was a part of that staff. He understands what it takes to build a program, and he understands what it takes to get to a national championship and make your team or your program one of the elites in the country. I think this is year two for Brent Venables.
I believe. I'm gonna
Yeah,
double check.
this is year 2. I think you see a different Oklahoma team. You seen flashes last year. Didn't they beat Texas in the Red River Shootout?
I'm not sure.
I think they beat Texas, if I'm not mistaken. I think they upset Texas last year. But with Jackson Arnold as a starting quarterback, a lot of college football analysts have been raving about that he's going to have a really, really good year for Oklahoma. You got to know that defense is going to be even better than it was last year under Brent Venables. He's one of the best, if not the best, defensive mind in the country. Arguably, if you're talking about him and Kirby Smart, right?
Yep.
I just believe that they're going to be a team that, regardless of what their record is, I'm not saying Oklahoma is going to be in the mix to win the SEC. But what I am saying is, when you play Oklahoma, it could go either way. I think that's the kind of program they're going to be this year. I think you're going to see them be one of those teams that they might mess around and upset a top 10 team in the country. But then the next week, they might come and lose to a team that's not even ranked. I think they're going to be one of them kind of teams. And so I still think, and when I say they're underrated, I'm saying that from a standpoint of they're going to be better than they was last year, and you better not take them lightly just because they're coming into the SEC. My second sleeper is the Missouri Tigers, bro. They had a remarkable year last year, going 11-2. Then they bring back Brady Cook and the best receiver in all of college football. Well, you know what? I'm gonna say arguably. I gotta give my guy Kyron Lacy the bid on that, man. You know what I'm saying? I will be doing him a disservice not to put him in there and say at least arguable, right? But a lot of people think Luther Burden will be the number 1 receiver taken next year in next year's draft. So you got that dynamic duo coming back. Now they did lose Blake Baker as their DC, right? So that could hurt them a little bit. But I just think with their schedule and when you got a quarterback and a receiver duo like that and the way that offense was clicking last year, I just think Missouri is going to be one of the most underrated teams in the country. I don't know why nobody's not talking about them. I don't know why people are trying to disrespect Missouri because we're used to them not being in the mix to be one of the better teams in the SEC. But I think that team is going to have something. They're going to have a season close to what they did last year, 11-2, maybe 10-3. But Missouri's going to be one of the better teams in the SEC next year.
Yeah, I could see Missouri not missing a beat, especially because of that Luther Burden situation. That's a big, big, big note. Yeah, I think that we're dialing back to A&M's toughest games. That's going to be one of their toughest. I have it as a top three. You got LSU, Texas, Mizzou, I think, and then Oklahoma. Yeah, when they get their teeth cut in a situation like that, that's definitely
I just
it's
don't believe Texas A&M bringing in over 20 transfers that they're going to be a team to be reckoned with this season. I just
no.
don't see it.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
the
I just
transfer portal definitely is a scary thing. I think what's going to help the Aggies in their situation is just that they're going to kind of sleepwalk to 5 wins in the beginning of the year. I think that
yeah.
maybe they add up some type of momentum. Maybe they click. Maybe they don't. I think another thing that we got to talk about, the transfer portal is a huge red flag. Another red flag, A&M, their offensive line's not terrible, but their offensive line's not great. I mean, we're talking about a quarterback recovering from injury because he's getting hit all the time. Also, they didn't have really much of a run game last year. Yeah, they lost two of their big backs the year prior, but I think the Aggies are definitely, in terms of, you have to find a team that you're gonna have to really pay attention to, and you might not have to look at their ranking or their record or whatnot. They might bring the fight to you. It's hard to rule that not one, because I feel like even that 2 years ago, LSU stumbles into College Station, gets absolutely destroyed, kills our CFP chances. If there even were any playoff chances that year, we go to the SEC title game. Everything was kind of collapsing at the end
That was
for
a big
us.
loss.
It was huge. And then another one of my favorite games I've ever witnessed, and this is probably crazy, but it is Coach Armstrong's last game. Texas A&M does come into Tiger Stadium ranked, and we're trying so hard to get a bowl contention. We're trying to get a bowl berth. We're barely floating around that 500 mark. We're looking for that win, and in 19 seconds left, Max Johnson delivers a dot to Dre Jenkins, and they take that one. Those moments make me think anything is possible for A&M. So for LSU's sake, I would say a team to keep an eye on. Just A&M, because you will have to go on the road and enter that 12th man atmosphere, and I think sometimes that does go underrated. I like their stadium. I like their environment. I think that that squad, it's not the best. Jimbo Fisher really probably would have hoped for a different end in that career. I feel like Scott Woodward bringing over Fisher, definitely everyone thought that was going to be a championship level coach, and then now he's on the way out, and he's got some players over there that went specifically for him, and they're on their way out, and now you got to go bite in the transfer portal and really, like I said, gamble. It could go one way, it could go another. You could hit the jackpot, you could be up Crap Creek without a paddle, and now you're just stuck floating along the current. It could go either way. I think the SEC, though, it's really the premier conference for college football. We just rattled off 6 to 7 teams. If you want to count the Georgias, the Alabamas, the LSU's of the world, you add them to these: Tennessee, Oklahoma, Mizzou, A&M. You got a lot of people that you got to keep an eye on. You've got a lot of teams. That's over half the conference that you could legitimately see enter a college football playoff. Now that's hopeful, but I think SEC does see four four teams at the very least. That's a third or a quarter of no, a third. That's a third of the entire bracket. Pure insanity. Hopefully
Agreed.
LSU is one of those. But we're gonna end this stream off. We're gonna kind of talk about JJ Reddick, his hire by the Los Angeles Lakers. And I do want to make an interesting note, because I went to the drawing board before we went live here on this Friday. And the first thing that I looked up was coaching experience, because obviously, I mean, JJ Reddick just hopped out of a career and hopped on a podcast, and next thing you know, boom, he's calling games, and he's a phenomenal analyst, phenomenal basketball mind. But I was just wondering if he had any coaching experience. He does not. No coaching experience at a professional level. No coaching experience at the amateur level.
He did coach his son's team. You got to
But
give him credit for that.
this is what I want to connect, though, because I feel like I gotta 100% like give everybody the track of where my brain went. So I was thinking, all right, no coaching experience. Guess what? I'm going to name you a head coach that entered the professional level after a successful playing career, after a little stint in the media. No experience, but extreme success. Steve Kerr, the Golden State Warriors. That's another experience where someone completely took the coaching world by storm without not any prior knowledge, but not any knowledge like a Doc Rivers or any of these premier. We're talking about elite coaches. I just would have never in a million years guessed J.J. Reddick would be the candidate for the Lakers. Dan Hurley, I could see that. The J.J. Reddick thing, when I first saw this rumor a couple weeks ago, I had to check the Twitter account, make sure it wasn't NBA Centel. I thought for a second I was getting bamboozled, but no, I mean, if you keep looking into it, it's not impossible. It's not a horrible fit. And we're talking about a comparison to Steve Kerr and the trajectory. He's in Steve Kerr's division as well. So they're going to, I'm sure, network a little bit. He might get some advice, some tutelage from somebody like that. But I did want to pump the brakes on the skepticism because myself included, I was like, man, how is this going to work out? Well, we've seen it work out before, quite frankly, with one of the more prevalent dynasties we've had in recent times in the Golden State Warriors. So, what's your reaction to JJ Redick? I thought that was a pretty funny little switch. I was like, oh my God, Steve Kerr, he's the next Steve Kerr. I'm joking, but
I love JJ Reddick, great basketball mind. I watch the podcast with him and LeBron all the time. You can really see how high level he thinks when it comes to the game of basketball, and he's an intellect. He's a deep thinker, and he played the game at a high level from when I say a high level, I mean from a standpoint of just understanding the game of basketball and being one of the best role players in the league. You know what I mean? Not at all trying to say JJ Redick was an elite basketball player, but the way he played the game, the way he approached the game, he did it at a high level for what he could do. You know what I mean? And I just think this is a bad hire. Not that JJ Redick can't be a successful coach in the NBA. I think it's a bad hire because everybody knows that him and LeBron has a really good relationship. They share wine together. They do a podcast together. They join at the hip. So a lot of decisions that JJ Redick is going to make throughout the season, right, in tough situations, he's going to be tagged at the hip with LeBron and really thinking about how LeBron feels instead of just saying, look, I'm the coach. This is the decision I'm making. This is what we're doing. And he's going to have in the back of his mind, does LeBron have a problem with this? Does LeBron agree with my approach to this? And that could bring some tension in that locker room. And you best believe the rest of those players on that team are going to be watching to see if JJ Redick is catering to LeBron. And if that happens, though, I just don't see the Lakers playing at the best of their ability. And that's why I think this is not a good hire. If JJ Redick was going to get the job with the Charlotte Hornets, I would be like, I think that's a good idea. But with the Lakers and knowing him and LeBron has the relationship that they have, I just don't think it's a good idea, man. I just don't think it's a good idea. And the roster, like that roster is not set up for them to be successful, in my opinion. I think they're going to be in the same situation they was this past year, fighting to get into the playoffs. They might get in as an 8, maybe a 7 seed or in the play-in. And they're going to be the most I can see them doing is getting to the second round. This roster is not set up for them to get to the finals. Unless Mitch Kupchak and Jeannie Buss about to make some kind of blockbuster trade that we don't know about, I just don't see how this roster is set up for them to be successful next year. So JJ Redick is put in a bad situation. Darvin Ham got the worst end of this. I mean, he was just in the conference finals the year before last, and you fire him? Like, what is Jeannie Buss and Mitch Kupchak doing? I just don't understand the direction of the Lakers organization right now. Dr. Buss is probably turning over in his grave. This is ridiculous. Like, for real. Like, no head coach has made it past 3 seasons since Phil Jackson.
Yeah, it's been a coaching carousel.
It's
like
crazy,
hell.
bro. It's a revolving door, and I just think JJ Redick is going to a no-win situation, bro. And you think about somebody like Steve Nash, right? You saw what happened. Steve Nash and Kevin Durant worked out in the offseason. He kind of trained Kevin Durant in the offseason. And Kevin Durant went to Sean Marks, the general manager for the Nets, and said that this is who I want to be the head coach. Well, we saw how that turned out. It was a dumpster fire. You know what I mean? And I just think this has the possibilities of having that same type of vibe with LeBron and JJ Reddick. And you bring up the Steve Kerr situation. I think it's totally different because Steve Kerr, number one, was in the front office with the Suns for a while. I can't remember how many years he was in the front office, but he was in the front office. So he was around the team. He got to see how things go. He got to see how things work on a day-to-day basis. No, he wasn't a coach, but he still was in the mix. So you got to give Steve Kerr a little credit for that because he got to see how things go on a day-to-day operations. And he came from under Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich. So I think that's a totally different situation than what JJ Redick coming from under. The best coach he's ever played for is Doc Rivers, right? And no disrespect to Doc Rivers, but he ain't the next coming a Red Auerbach. So I just don't know if this is a good hire. I feel like JJ Redick probably should have went another route and went to the Hornets. But I guess it's hard to turn on the Lakers. I mean, it is the Lakers. It's in LA, beautiful weather. And I think he got 4 years. What he got? 4 years, 60 million, 50 million, something like that.
Big bag.
So I get it. It's hard to turn on, but I would not be surprised if this doesn't work out. And I hope I'm wrong when I say it because I really like JJ Redick. I like his basketball mind, I like his personality, and I love his passion for the game. But that's just the times we living in the NBA. It's like they trying to get a quick fix and not really doing their due diligence when it comes to building a franchise, especially when you talk about somebody like the Lakers. Come on, man. Like they're supposed to be ran like a top tier organization.
Yeah, my instant reaction, I was kind of confused on how you go from the podcasting world to the head coaching world. But I will say, I'm going to pump the brakes just because I did find that interesting. I'm like, man, I was looking up, I'm wondering, no experience. How has this ever worked out before? I just need to see some type of example. And then poof, I see Steve Kerr, and I'm like, oh my God, I better be quiet. You never know. But
Right.
it is interesting because it is a big market. It is a big and then also you see the storyline kind of floating around that LeBron was quote unquote uninvolved in this hire. That's hard to believe. I mean, I get it. You gotta say it. You gotta have the PR save face and all this. But how is LeBron not involved in this hire when he's not only one of the best players in the NBA, he's your best player. He's your franchise cornerstone. You're not going to contact him about your head coaching search or see what he feels, especially when it's somebody like this that he obviously has a close relationship to. So I mean,
Right.
they all were on the same page on this one, and hopefully that's for the better. Hopefully they're all on the same page, and maybe we can end the madness in Los Angeles. But I think we're gonna be keeping close tabs on this one soon. This will probably be endless storylines coming out of the Lakers facilities with this.
We'll see.
We
We will
shall
see.
see.
All I'm worried about right now is my Houston Rockets, man. We gotta make a good decision in his offseason, man. We gotta get
Please.
if we can go get Paul George, man. Throw the bag at Paul George, man.
Thank
Come on,
you.
man.
I'm glad you said,
Come on,
man. We got Coco in the
God
chat.
damn.
I was just saying we need Paul George because I'm seeing all these rumors about Brandon Ingram this, Brandon Ingram that, trying to 1-for-1 him with Sengun. Do not pull the trigger on moving Sengun because we've done that with Clint Capella. We've lost bigs in the past that had a lot of potential. And was Clint on the way out potentially? But I just feel like the Rockets are always pushing all the chips in on some of the most weird, like last year, Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet. Stop. What happened to
No. Listen, I didn't have a problem with the Van Fleet and the Dylan Brooks
It's for,
sign. I
but
really didn't.
if they
Because
didn't pay Van Vliet
but this is why.
41,
Listen,
it wouldn't have hurt
but
as
this is
bad.
why. Right, but this is why. They knew they couldn't get none of the bigger names. So you go get two veterans to go with that young group. And I thought Van Fleet did a really good job this year at the point guard position. He's a champion, right? Won a championship with Toronto, right? And you drafted somebody like A-Man Thompson, who I think is going to be a star in the league, by the way. He's molding A-Man Thompson. He's mentoring him. He's showing him how to be a point guard in the league. I think that's going to pay off big for A-Man Thompson and that Rockets organization going forward. I'm telling you, it's chess, it ain't checkers. Dylan Brooks, he's a glue guy, 3-and-D guy. You need that toughness. You need that grittiness, man. You know, he's the kind of guy that that's the unsung hero when you see a team that's making a run in the playoffs, bro. You need somebody like that. But now, right, we got to go get a name like Paul George, man. Go ahead and trade Jabari away, right? Go
Hmm.
ahead, trade Jabari away, right? And you get somebody like Paul George, man. Go get Paul
I
George, man.
would love to
Tell him.
see it, and I look. I see the Fred Van Vliet situation. I get it, but here's what hurts me. I'm looking at Spot Track right now. Fred Van Vliet is making more than Kyrie Irving, Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, R.J. Barrett, Jalen Brunson, LeBron. Bruh, please listen. Fred Van Vliet,
That's
you're
just
not
for
a
this
bad
1 year.
guy.
That's
No,
just for this 1 year.
that's next
That's not
year
the
too.
totality of the contract, though. That's
I
just this
get
one
it.
year.
I just
They front loaded it.
that's
They
a
front loaded
lot.
the contract.
That's a lot of assets that we could have with that money.
Yeah, but you got
It's
look in the
hurting.
NBA. You got to spend
That's
the money.
hurting.
You got to spend the money.
You do,
You got
but
to think about it. You got to
I
think
was
about
just wondering
Jabari,
on Fred on
right?
FFVV.
But Jabari and Jalen Green, they still on their rookie contracts, so they got to spend the money somewhere.
I just
You can't just hold on to the money,
I
Jacob. You
know,
can't
I
just hold
know.
on to the
I
money.
agree. I agree. You do gotta. Hey, if you got it, spin them, smoke them if you
You got
got
to
them.
spend
I
it.
know, I know. But I
I
just
think
when I
this bad.
seen that notification come across, I was like, oh my god, we're going from. Well, I mean, we had point guard heaven. You got James Harden. You got Chris Paul. We had Russell Westbrook for a little bit, and now I get it. Look, he chipped his tooth winning a championship. He's got that dog in him. I'm trying. Dylan Brooks too. I tried so hard to make the Dylan Brooks signing work in my head, and then I watch it during the season, and I'm like, man, we're so far away from that 2016 era where you got 8 playoff runs in a row and everything's working. And if you would have told me at that point in time, hey, buddy, James Harden and the Rockets aren't going to get it done, I'd have never believed you. I'd have said, you're a liar. You're insane. And then now to be in this situation, I'm glad we're looking up. I'm glad we got the number 3 pick too. The lottery finally is starting to make some things shake. You know, we got robbed of a number 1
Even though
pick a
I'm not
couple
overly
times.
excited about this draft, but
I
hey,
hope they trade it, is what I'm getting at.
that's what
Trade
I'm
it.
saying. That's what
Trade
I'm
the
saying.
number 3
Listen,
pick.
trade Jabari, trade the number 3 pick, and go get you a
Please.
superstar.
Please, we need it. Because the Jalen Brown
Go get
hype
you a
had me
superstar, man.
so excited. And then I got my heart broken. So and then they got Ime. That's a good move. Tyree Eason, I want to also give him some credit. Huge role player. Tyree Eason's a phenomenal
LSU
athlete.
product.
Exactly. And
And look,
then
I like our head coach Udoka. I really like Udoka.
I think
As
he's
long
an
as he stay
awesome
away from
coach.
the owners and the people in the front office, wives, I'm
Yeah.
good with him. I'm
Yeah.
good with him. He's a
Please don't
great
step on no
basketball mind.
toes. I think the Rockets definitely, man. We gonna have to put some
We
juju
right there,
on them,
bro. We
man.
right there, bro. I'm telling you, we
I
right there.
think so. Well, thank you, G, for hopping on. Thank you for giving me some optimism for my Houston Rockets. Cause man,
There you go.
it's been a hell of a run since James Harden left. It's been nothing but
I
gut
know it.
punches
I
and
know it.
breath taken away. But hopefully, good times are near. By the way, I do want to make a note. No network disruptions. Y'all go ahead and hit the subscribe button for that. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll be live again on Monday. G, enjoy the camp, and thank you again for hopping